into searching for that guy who's the thought leader, the majestic golden haired woman that's somehow going to give us all of the advice to survive in life. Man, I just want to have regular conversations with everyday folks that are just with me in life in general. And because so much wisdom can come out of these little moments. And I'm really excited actually when you was like, hey man, I'd be interested. One
How do you
thing.
know I'm not that guy though?
Do what?
How do you know I'm not that guy though?
You might be, and that's the thing about it is like, I think you actually could very well be that guy today for a lot of people, for a lot of reasons. And so if you're on Facebook, just know that like y'all are welcome to comment, and I'll pick those comments up and make sure that Matt hears and sees all of that. I am breaking something here. All right. There we go. So Matt, here we go, man. You are by trade a baker.
Yes, sir.
So when I met you, like, right, you're 15 years old. If I were to guess the trajectory of your life, baker would not have been that moment. So what got you moving in that direction? Like, how did you end up a baker, man? And you're brilliant, by the way. Let's just make sure we're aware. It's one thing to say somebody's a baker and it's like, cool, you make, donuts out of like Womp biscuits. Like, that's not really a baker. Like, you are a craftsman in this world. You're very brilliant. So, man, talk to us a little bit about that. How did you get into bakerdom?
Gosh, I guess it started with my my first restaurant job, which was maybe 13 years ago.
Okay.
At Locatelli's, you might have had them.
Yeah.
They're actually amazing. I love their pizza, but I dropped out of college. I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life, so I got a job there, and kind of the rest was history. I just fell in love with like the kitchen life and playing with the dough, throwing it up in the air, and getting flour everywhere, just being messy, And I don't know if you had ever been to Java Jazz when it was in Old Town Spring.
I know what you're talking about. Gosh, I don't. Wow, that's nuts. Yeah, I haven't heard of that place in a long time.
When I was in high school, I was in a band, and my band used to play there all the time. And we became friends with the owner there. His name was Dave. And whenever he sold his business, he went and started at Hubble and Hudson, and he was the bakery manager there. And I had no idea what I was doing with bread at all. But he was like, "Hey Matt, I just want you to join my team." So I was like, "Okay, you're gonna have to teach me everything. I have no idea what I'm doing." And he was like, "Okay, no problem at all." So he taught me about sourdough. He taught me about brioche, just how to handle the dough and shape it and bake it, and how to know when it was ready to bake and everything like that. So I devote a lot of my learning about bread to him.
Well, so let's, man, you hit something that, being a bread expert that I am, I've watched all of the British baking shows. I watched all the holiday baking shows. So I am kind of an expert in that field. In case nobody's picking up on the sarcasm, I am 100% not a baker. That is a very technical world. You are a very creative person. So talk to me about how you are satisfied being in a completely technical world, bringing your creativity to it. Like, what do you do? How do you get into that space? Because, man, you can't mess up a recipe, but like slapping something in there can. So how do you bring creativity into that space?
It's really actually kind of hard. Certain recipes, I have to use a gram scale, and everything has to be spot on, and the temperature has to be right. It has to be the right temperature inside my house for it to be right.
But how do you figure that out? Like, I have to have the temperature right in my house to even make sure that I can bake. That's nuts.
It's hard. You just have to let the bread kind of guide you, and like once you've handled a certain recipe 100 times, you kind of let it go, and you try to be minimalistic with your hands, and you try not to mess with it very much. So being creative is kind of hard in that aspect. So that's why I like doing pies a lot, because you make the crust, that's the technical part, but then you can throw anything you want inside the pie, and then you bake it off. So you can put like bacon and cheese and eggs, whatever you want inside. So you can do savory, sweet, whatever you want. So I don't know. It's hard to be creative with something so technical.
Yeah.
But
So something you just said, and I want to bounce back to the sweet and savory. So don't let me forget that. But something you just said is you got to let the bread guide you. There's something phenomenal about that. And what's really really neat is I've been picking up these little things that people say in their world. Like my sister-in-law, she works at a grocery store, and I was talking to her about leadership and how she resolves conflict. And she goes, at the end of the day, when we sit down and we have a conversation, it's about milk, bread, and eggs. Everything else we can fix. It's like,
Yeah.
that's brilliant. You just said something that I think is probably laced with a ton of brilliance. You said just let the bread guide you. What does that mean? Like, is there a feeling around that? Is there like an actual technicality around it? When you say that, what does that even mean? How can I grab that and put it into my life?
Well, in life, you want to be in control, don't you? You want every aspect of your life to be planned out, don't you?
Yeah, yes. If you know me, the answer is absolutely yes. I'm a control freak.
Oh, that was the hardest thing for me to learn. Once, like, I wanted to mix the dough, shape it, and bake it right then and there. But
Okay.
the problem with that is that you don't develop any flavor just baking it right then and there. So you want fermentation to happen. You want the bread to rise over the course of maybe 36 hours. So I have to step back in the kitchen, look at it, make sure it's not going wild and everything. Just little tweaks that you can do here and there to. It's so hard to put into terms because it's like bread is a completely different language. Um, I don't know. It's hard.
No, man, but it's you say it's hard, but like there's a bit of a fascination on my end listening to you go, man, I can't explain it. That's like if I were to say, tell me about why you love your wife. It's like you start to explain some of the technicalities, like, okay, she's beautiful and she's nice, she does all this stuff, and then you're like, you get into this moment of like, ugh, and essentially what you just said is that like everything within me is passionate about this thing, and
Yeah.
so I am satisfied learning patience in the process. I'm satisfied learning the technicality in the process. I'm okay with the sacrificing. Like there's a lot of things that I think we find ourselves okay with when we understand the passion behind it. And essentially
Yeah.
you're saying that without expressing words and just kind of those grunts and those groans, which all of
Yeah.
us, I think most of us want to come alive in those moments. And so I don't know. I just think there's brilliant something in like, let the bread guide you. I'm
Yeah.
gonna
Well,
find a way
then,
that's my life now. Let the bread guide you, guys. Come on,
yeah.
doing here. Let the bread
Well,
guide
then,
you.
the satisfaction of spending 3 days making one loaf of bread, and then after it comes out of the oven and it's sizzling and crackling, it's like, oh my gosh, I just made that. I can't believe it. And I don't know. I've probably thrown away 100 pounds of dough before just because it wasn't right, and I'm my toughest critic. And if it's not perfect, I throw it away. You know. So
Yeah.
it's
Now, it's fun. You say you're your toughest critic, and everything that you make though is beautiful. So I think there's something to be said about like in your brain, there's a vision and there's a values behind what you do, so that everything that you produce is not even just about consumption. Right? It's not about consumption. There's almost like this weird random thing that you're having about relationship with your product that is eventually going to be your bridge to people. And so if bread is your bridge to people, then what you've done is you put relationship into bread, which is absolutely
exactly.
absurd to think about. And yet you're doing it. That's really neat, man. I like
Yeah,
that.
well, culture is all based around food, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, there's other aspects. There's religion and friendship, relationships, and stuff like that. But it all comes back to food and sharing your food with other people. I mean, at least in my world.
Yeah.
So,
So when you're baking, do you like to go sweet or savory most? Like what's your jam?
um, man, it's tough. I like both. Definitely, the patience comes into play with the baking and the savory, the sweets and everything. But I love cooking savory food for my family and everything. And eventually we're going to open this restaurant in Tomball, and we're going to have a brunchy type place with a lot of French inspired dishes and lots of savory, lots of sweet, lots of baking, and everything, of course, is on scratch made bread. So,
Yeah. Hey, you mentioned Tomball, so let's not bypass that and give you a second to share some love to Tomball, because the city of Tomball in Texas, Houston, in the suburb of Houston, Texas, Tomball has been good to you and
yes.
your business. Share some love there, man. I know that you're in a farmers market group there, right? What's like, just
Yeah.
this is your moment. Just give them their plug that they deserve.
I mean, my history with Tomball goes way back. I went to Tomball High School. I was class of '06 there. I met my wife there. Man, I've just been in Tomball forever. I love it. The city is great. the Tomball Farmers Market is, they just got voted the best farmers market in Houston. Just all the small businesses there are just incredible. They love to share with other people, and the crafters there are just amazing. Yeah, the city of Tomball has a lot of heart.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it a lot.
Yeah. Well, and gosh, like I'm grateful for it. So Adam and I come up. So Adam's my little boy. We'll come up and we'll get cookies. We obviously from your shop, what do you call it? Your tent, your setup.
Yeah,
and
my booth.
Your booth. There we go. Booth. That's a pretty simple word. So we love it. We love the environment of it. There's something special, I think, about artisans getting together, communities come in to be a part of that, shopping local, participating in local, and really it's interesting that the camaraderie that comes from a farmer's market, it's not lost. I think there's this moment of we keep going in society in general, all the good old days. There's never been a time where somebody didn't talk about the good old days. Farmers markets are timeless. They're always the good old days. I bet the farmers market that we participate in now feels, except for the digital side of exchange, feels so much like it did years and years and years ago.
Yeah, so I work all week to finally get to the farmers market on Saturday. And when I'm finally there, I get to interact one-on-one with my customers, and they have direct feedback for me, which I've never had before. I've always been in a kitchen where we send a plate out, and then the server comes back and said, oh, they loved it. And it's really awesome that they get to put a face to the person who's actually producing your food, or your birdhouses or whatever they're selling out at the farmers market. So it's direct feedback, and I love that. And just conversating with all the small business owners out there is it's amazing. All the hard work that they put out just so they can try and sell their product is amazing.
Yeah. So you said direct feedback, right? That's interesting because direct feedback can be a double-edged sword. So what are some of the things that you've really gleaned from having that direct feedback?
Oh gosh. That's a hard question because
you can think about it for a second. I'm okay. Like, it was just interesting for you to say that, because that's got to be hard and rewarding at the same time, personally and professionally.
Yeah, well, it's hard because people try to be nice to you, and they're like, "Oh, well, we loved it," and you could kind of tell on their face that they might have not have loved the product that you had last week. But like I said, I'm my toughest critic, and I can tell when somebody's not happy with the product. So. And if I'm not happy with the product, I'm definitely not going to sell it. So, yeah.
How do you take it when it does get to that? Because it's going to be personal sometimes. How do you internalize and learn from and move beyond that moment when you feel attacked from a criticism? And I know that it sounds simple to talk about baking, but that's your craft, it's your passion, it's your love. If I was like, meh, I might not think twice about that, but that's going to trigger something in you. So what do you do to go, and find some sort of growth, some sort of movement from that?
Yeah, well, sometimes it pisses me off to the point where I'm never going to make that mistake again. I think that's my problem. Is I get it's so personalized for me, where I get so heated and so mad about it that I'll never make that mistake again, and I achieve something a little bit better next week. You know what I mean? So.
Matt, there's something special about the way you're talking about a simple task of baking. And in my head, we weren't going to spend but a little bit of time. I wanted to know your journey and stuff, but like, man, you've talked about this in such eloquent language that I don't know that I could have ever put into my thoughts, into my processes, into my brain, that everything that you do, your one-to-one happens first. There's a 0.5 moment of that one-to-one that's 100% in your product. Like, you're creating relationship by, like, baking is your bridge to relationship. And people need to hear what you're saying there, because all of us have a widget that we're pimping out to the world. There's a widget in our life. Now, granted, somebody may be paying us to build this widget, but yet there's something that you're building that it's a bridge. And when we start looking at it as a bridge, I wonder what we would start doing differently in our worlds and how we might look at relationships differently.
I mean, relationships is everything, you know? That's why we're here, I think. In my world, relationships is everything.
I don't know, man. You're blowing my mind with that thought process. I guess because I look at cooking and I look at it from such a minute position. It is, I enjoy it. It's a stress reliever for me. Um, I cook a lot of food for my family. I do all the cooking, but it's my way of just it's selfish. It fulfills what I need.
Yeah.
You are looking at it differently. And so I wonder how many of us are looking at the things we do and we expect that the rest of the world is just going to bypass it or touch it or consume it for what it's worth. Like it's in and out, it's nourishment. It's like, it's in one end, out the other eventually, right?
Yeah.
If we want to make a poop joke awkwardly. And yet there's so much time that is spent in that moment of, if I put my life and I put my passion into this, it is going to be a direct opportunity for me to be connected.
Right.
And we can all connect to somebody through what we're doing.
Yeah. I love that.
That's cool. You're blowing my mind here, man. I could end right now and that would be so like just satisfying to think about. If I thought about everything that I touched in my world and the way that you looked at baking a bread, I bet I would gain life meaning like substantially. I think it's really cool. I'm really enjoying this moment, man.
Yeah. Well, I don't see it as anything. I mean, everything is an art. I think cooking is an art. Like you take a painting that somebody spent hours on and it's for somebody's gratification, right? They want somebody to look at their art and say, oh, wow, that's beautiful. And it satisfies a certain sense. It might satisfy your eyes. It's pleasing to your heart. You might have some sort of feeling of connection with that art. And I think that's the same with food, except it nourishes you. It's a talking piece too. So people can talk about your food and you can connect with people like that.
Yeah, that's neat. Okay, so now you're a small business owner, obviously. Is Tomball the main space? The Tomball is that your main source of like actually selling your product, or how do you go about creating a platform for baking?
Well, yeah, I've been baking out of my house for 4 years, selling it at the Tomball Farmers Market, and yeah, that's 100% where I sell it. So,
Okay.
yeah,
Awesome. If somebody, so right now during this moment, then like obviously there's been a hit in your world, or I guess I say obviously I would from the outside looking in consider that it's going to affect you pretty strongly. Like yeah, that's a very like specific niche place to be able to put your product.
yeah. So one of the things that we run into is we're checking the weather nonstop since I only have one day to sell my bread. So if it's raining on Saturday, there goes my income for the week.
Yeah.
So you got to get creative. You got to put out a menu that, well, if it's raining, you got to deliver. So you just have to get creative. I'm sure it's the same in all small businesses. Like if you run into hiccups or something like that, you just have to get creative and figure out another way to make money that week.
So now, with that being said, though, COVID has given a lot of us the ability as consumers to do things differently, and we're okay with doing things differently. Whereas
Yeah.
before, like, no, I don't. I want the convenience. I want the service. I want all that stuff about like of how I've always done business. And now we're thinking like, oh my gosh, well, now I may need to do business a little bit differently. Is there anything that you're looking at going, you know what? In my head, I thought that I would never be able to do this one thing this one way, but everybody's okay with it now. And
Yeah.
I can actually use this as a stepping stone into what's next in my business. Are you seeing any of those things kind of come to fruition?
Yeah, absolutely. So I used to bake on Fridays, bring it to the farmer's market, and there'd just be a line at my booth until I sold out.
Yeah.
So now I actually created a website, and I'm not tech savvy at all.
Okay.
So I created a pre-order menu that I put out on Sundays, and people start ordering Sunday to Thursday, and I might be sold out on Tuesday, and I haven't baked a single product yet.
Oh my gosh. What's your website? I'm going to blast it out on the Facebook comments.
It is flourhousebakers.square.site.
Flourhousebakers.square.
Yep.
.site.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, flour, FLOURHOUSEBAKERS.square.site. Perfect.
Yeah.
I have to spot check myself. I was raised and born and bred and educated in Georgia. So I do have to spot check my spelling because I'm a terrible speller. And grammar, I don't know why I had no desire to learn those things in high school and middle school, but my wife makes fun of me all the time for it. So, man, gosh, I'd love to be able to shift gears a little bit.
Yeah.
Your life experiences have been uh, pretty neat. You've been very purposeful about what you do. Like you're a dad, you're a husband, you're a small business owner. You're very purposeful about a lot of things. Like, do you have, did you start that with like a vision? Is there something that like kind of drove you to like be very specific about, or do you just like, how do you connect? Cause like you look as if I were on the outside looking in, man, I feel like you have so much satisfaction and so much meaning just in life in general, like you do. And again, that's from an outside observation, but like, is there purpose? Like, do you have something that you drive to, or does it just seem to happen?
Well, yeah, I think that things change in life sporadically, and you just have to adapt to whatever's happening in your life. Things go bad, and you might be, I don't know, you might not be able to take it for a little bit, but you just have to strive to keep going and everything. Um, and we've struggled financially, we've struggled in certain different areas in our life, but just knowing that God is there and He's taking care of you, you have healthy kids, you're healthy yourself. Like you need to focus on the positive things, and yeah, being able to adapt to your scenario is really important. Um, yeah, you have to realize that there's certain things that aren't important. Money is not that important as long as you're healthy, you know?
Yeah.
um,
It'll get you where you need to go. It's a tool. Like, I think that's the thing. People look at money and they forget that it's a tool. Like, it is a tool in your tool bag, and it'll get you where you need to go. And there's a very specific way and route for which it can be used. It's a garden hoe. It's
yeah,
literally a tool if you want to make sure that you use it that way. It's not a satisfaction.
yeah.
It's a tool.
And my kids have really helped out too. Like before I had kids, I didn't really have a lot of meaning. I mean, I guess my wife was a certain driver for my life and everything like that. But when I first had kids, it's just like, oh my gosh, it's a whole new meaning to life, you know. I'm not really important anymore at all.
You learn that real fast.
Yeah. So I
Man,
don't know.
so are your kids involved in what's going on? Like, I know that your wife is. Are your
Mhm.
kids involved in what you've got going on as far as like, do they like to get involved in the baking? Do they like to get in there and make a mess? Gosh, what a dream to be a kid to like just, dad says we can make a mess with the flour. I'm gonna make a mess with the flour.
Yeah. So one day a week we do baking Sundays where we do biscuits or pancakes or something they help me with. It's kind of hard when I'm running a food-based business out of my house and like I got to keep everything sanitary.
Yeah.
But so Sundays they come into the bakery with me. I get their little aprons on and they get to throw the flour around, and it's really fun. So and they're at a good age too. They're 7 and 5 now.
Yeah. Well,
And
it's a
they
lot of
just
fun. What's your favorite thing to do with those guys? Like, do y'all have like a tradition?
yeah, well they're really different. My oldest is 7, Eli, and he's like really athletic. So we'll go out and play catch with the football and just be really physical.
Yeah.
Um, Daniel is more of just like, I want to sit and cuddle or I want to sit and read a book and just really affectionate, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Well, so if you needed to, just so that you're aware, because you're talking about little traditions, I actually have a great gluten-free pancake recipe. And so if you need something new, I'm happy to share it with
oh,
you.
yeah, absolutely.
No, I'm kidding. However, I will tell you, actually, let's talk about that for a second. In my house, it like we don't have like true gluten, like traumatic things that we have to do gluten for every which reason. But there is some skin challenges with my wife and with my daughter that they have to be gluten free. It helps.
Yeah.
It's obvious that it helps. Man, I love pancakes. I spent probably 8 weeks perfecting a gluten-free pancake recipe to where it didn't taste like garbage. I didn't want like it was like I almost gave up. Now I have it down pat. I have it perfected. We have like gluten-free pancake Saturdays every Saturday.
Oh, that's awesome.
What you do have to venture into that space. So what does it look like to adapt like all the technical side, all that stuff, and to begin to adapt your product to make sure that it's meeting the needs of the people who like obviously you want to serve.
Man, I'm glad you brought that up because one of our goals in our business is, well, sourdough bread, I don't know if you know, but once gluten has been fermented for about 36 hours or longer, it changes what gluten really is, and it's no longer gluten. And so people who have gluten sensitivity, they can have my sourdough bread.
I did not know that. Yeah. All right.
I'm not exactly sure the science behind it, but yeah. So that's what we're trying to spread the word, that it's not gluten that's bad. It's the chemicals in bread that are bad that you buy at the store. So if you buy a loaf of bread at the store, there might be 70 ingredients in it.
Okay.
The sourdough that we do, it has 3. It's water, flour, kosher salt, and then the sourdough starter, which is water and flour that's been fermented over and over and over again.
So, gosh, a starter, because like, all right, I'm just going to shift gears from like, if you're watching, be bored by this or be interested in this, whatever you want. This is me personally just going, what's up with starter? Like, I've heard this, obviously, like these old, like, this starter's been in my family for like 25 years. It's like, what?
Yeah.
Like, can I just make a starter? Like, why do you have to keep this one, like, little piece, like, it's like this eternal flame?
Starters are really awesome because it's just water and flour. And once you start the starter, it starts smelling really, really bad, and you have to throw away half and then feed it with more flour and water for about a week, and then it starts smelling sweet, kind of like beer. And then it's ready to use. Instead of yeast, you just use this starter, and that's what makes the bread rise. And it's a fermentation culture that you could put in your bread, and it adds a really deep flavor, and it helps the bread rise, and it's awesome. I love it.
Is that better to use than yeast? Because like I don't know a whole lot about all this stuff, but like I mean, here's some how-tos in our life.
So yeast, they isolated the chemical that was in starter that made the bread rise, and they made a manufactured product, and that's what they call yeast. So it's not a real thing at all. So we're trying to steer clear of the yeast.
Yeah. Well, gosh, and it's weird to buy something that, like, obviously there's medicines to help you get rid of yeast, and yet now here we are, like, gonna try to slam it into our body. You need to do a start. Like, I'm sure we could YouTube it, but why not make it connected to somebody who's pretty phenomenal? And you may already have it out there, but like creating a starter, I do bake a gluten-free bread because I don't like spending $20 on gluten-free bread at the grocery store. I think it's ridiculous. So I do make a gluten-free bread. I like buy my flour in bulk from the flour company that does the gluten-free flour that we like. But I always use yeast. I need to make myself a starter, I guess.
The problem with that, it's flour, so it's
it defeats the purpose. There we go. Wow.
But I have heard of kombucha starters, so I don't know if you could use your gluten-free mix and use kombucha to make your starter.
That's interesting. Well, now I just got to experiment, man. Now you're forcing me to think deeper. Go deeper with your life, Randy.
Yeah.
Well, man, let me ask you this. So you've got, obviously a really great, thriving small business. You've got this dream to be able to open up this restaurant. There's so many nuances that you pick up along the way. What would you say, if you could distill the 1 or 2 things that you found to be the most important steps in moving in the direction of, like, obviously starting your business, but then having a thriving business? Is there anything in that mix that you would just like isolate and go, man, I learned this about myself, or take this and put it into action in your life?
Yeah, it's just, man, it's all about growing internally. The more I grow within inside myself, the more my business grows too. It's trying to have a connection with people, trying to be virtuous within myself, trying to be a good father, a good husband. It's biblical, really. You just want to be a good person and everything. And it seems like everything falls into line after that. So
that's virtuous. Nobody talks like that anymore. You're like Shakespeare over here. Virtuous. I like that. Being virtuous in yourself. If you honor yourself in the processes, and obviously there's that's not a selfish version of virtue, right? Because like being a good father is a huge sacrifice. Being connected to God is a huge sacrifice. Being connected to your wife, it's a sacrifice. And so it's funny. Virtue is a very sacrificial thing. Now, what do you do personally to like dig into sources to help you grow? Like, are you always just evaluating the things that you've been through, or are there certain things that you do like to consume?
one of the things that I think about a lot is sacrifice.
Okay.
Instead of being like mad at the sacrifices that I've had to make, you need to be happy with those. It's actually a blessing to have to sacrifice.
Yeah.
It makes you a better person. It helps you grow a lot. Um, yeah, I don't know. It's hard.
Yeah.
Hard to
Man,
describe.
yeah, I like that. It is hard. All of it is very difficult. But I like what you just said, though. We do get into the sacrifice and we almost feel disdain towards the sacrifice.
Yeah.
And I think that's natural, right? But we can control we can't control our first thought, but we can control the second, right? So immediately when that disdain hits, how do you flip that and turn it into the blessing side of it, right? It's always got to be about that transition. Like, I can be disappointed, and a disappointed first thought is not a bad thing. That's a natural reaction of our brain survival skills. But the second thought can be the virtuous thought of like, look what I've gained from this. Look what I'm growing. Look who I've become.
I guess my first thought is I'm not like other people. Everybody's been through something, and they handle it differently. So how can I handle this for myself and make it a blessing towards myself and my family? You look at other people and they might have a bigger house and stuff like that. You just got to realize that you're not the same. You can connect with other people, but you're not the same as other people.
Yeah. Matt, I'm still like, I'm loving the idea of let the bread guide you. Like, that's going to be, I'm going to find a way to apply that into my world over and over. Man, so I want to make sure, my goal is to obviously just open up the door, have some conversations. And this is a bit of a sacrifice in your world. Doesn't feel like that strong, maybe, but yet it is for time. Time is a very important piece of the puzzle. So in return, what I best could give you is your opportunity with an audience, for as long as this video will roll through people's feeds. What are some of the causes or something that you're championing right now where it would be a great opportunity for you to just to be able to say, hey, pay attention to this, know this, do this, or this is a charity I'm involved with, or this is a small business that you need to support, or this is what's going on in your world right now that like we could just give you the audience to be able to make sure that you have a voice?
I've been so passionate about supporting local. I guess we've kind of hit that topic already, but you know who you're supporting when you're buying local, especially from a farmer's market or directly from the source. You know it's going towards their family, and you know they're going to spend that money locally too, so it goes back into the pockets of people who are around you. And you got to support your local farmers, your local businesses.
I like what you just said, though, because most people say support local and that's it. Support local and that's it. But what you just said is also really interesting. Support local because they also support local.
Yeah.
I don't think we draw that line. The people who are supported locally are also consuming and helping support local businesses. And so It does have this exponential opportunity. It has a compounding opportunity that when we start to draw that trail, instead of just thinking it's a one-off, like, sure, I bought a cookie from you, but while you're at the farmer's market, you're spending money on your week's groceries. Those people are in turn going to, like, maybe not in that same farmer's market, but they've got somewhere where they've got to go spend money for their farm. Yeah. So it's interesting. I like that thought process. That those people who are local also spend local. There's a lot of power in local businesses. I tell agents that all the time. If you really want to find a way to make your network strong, find a way to involve local businesses.
Yeah, exactly. Because when I'm at the farmer's market, I'll trade some of my English muffins for a pack of eggs that I'll end up using in my bread later. So it's like an endless cycle of trading, bartering, while also supporting. Because like I'll sell my pack of English muffins for $5, and they sell their eggs for $5, and we equally trade. But for them, it doesn't really cost that much, and for me, it doesn't really cost that much to make. So it's really, I don't know. If you have a trade, you need to use your trade for the betterment of your family, and like, I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. I keep saying this all the time. We're in the giving economy, and a lot of people don't know what they can give, and they think it's got to be money or it's got to be an object. The reality is, if you give out of your love, like if you give from a passion, if you give out of your love, one, you're going to be satisfied. There is a self-satisfaction that comes from giving out of your passion.
Yeah.
And man, people respond to love. And when you give from that space, it's much different. It just is. It's a handwritten card for Mother's Day from your kid who just learned how to draw with a crayon versus, whatever gift that I get from the store That's
Yeah,
the difference. When you give from passion, it comes like with a childlike wonder, and it's just neat to watch.
I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, hey man, I really appreciate it. Thanks for taking your time and getting together. This is huge. I really appreciate it. Flower House, how did they find you on Instagram? I put your deal in there. What's your Instagram handle? Because I follow you.
Flower House Bakers.
Flower House Bakers.
Yep.
Any underscores or anything awkward that they've got to? Okay, sweet. Yeah, man, you guys, and especially if you're in and around Tomball and the Tomball's Farmers Market, Saturdays, are they still up and running? I know they've been doing a very similar grocery store style. Keep your distance. Let's make sure people can keep their businesses going.
Yeah, all the vendors are spaced out, so the customers can have their space too.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's required at the farmers market to have a mask on. I'm not exactly sure.
Okay. Hey, and yet, like, regardless, go support, go be there. Y'all are there. It's a really awesome deal. And then obviously they can start finding you online if they're in and around Houston. So
Yeah.
phenomenal, man. Thank you so much for being with me.
Yeah, thanks, Randy. That was fun.
You're welcome, bud. Well, take care.
See ya.
Bye.